In this video, I will show you how quickly you can get started using Brainboard to build your first use case that you can scale easily later. So let's get started. Before we go, just one thing that you need to keep in mind is that in Brainboard, you build cloud infrastructures exactly the same way you think about it. So let's take a real use case here, build in, for example, a function app in Azure with a private endpoint, and we can add more component later if you want. So, all right, here I have Azure selected, and if you select any other provider, it will work the same. And these are the resources that are available in Azure. And the very important information here is that these resources actually are the Terraform resources for the provider Azure. For our use case, I will start first with a location. Here, I put the location here. This location, I can use the locations available at Azure or use a variable for my location. Here I'm going to use a variable because I'm planning to deploy this infrastructure in multiple locations later. And now I will just create a variable for my location and specify which location I want here in the default value. I will use East US. All right, now I will add the resource group to my location. And you can see, as I add the resources into the design area, the Terraform code is generated on the fly for me. And now I give it a name for this resource group. I call it RG1. And inside my resource group, I will search for a Linux function app, and I will add it here into my design. And I know that the function app needs a service plan and a storage account. So I go ahead and search for a service plan. I will edit here and search for storage account and add it to the design here as well. Now I will start configuring the resources. For the service plan here, I have in this configuration menu all the parameters that are supported both by Terraform and by Azure. You can see here, these are the required parameters, and here are the advanced if I want to go into more details and configure any parameter I want. During the configuration, Brainboard will help you based on the information that we get from the documentation of Terraform and the API of the provider. For example, here for the OS type, I will pick Linux. So these are the suggestions. And the same for the SQ. Here is all the suggestions. And I will pick P1 v3, for example, and give it a name, onboarding. This is for the service plan. So now if when I close this menu, I have the Terraform code that is updated to reflect my configuration. I do the same for the storage account. So here I have the suggestions. I pick LRS for the application type. I pick standard for the tier and give it a name, onboarding. All right, so now I go to my function app and I will configure all the information. For the name, I call it onboarding. And now that Brainboard has the knowledge of all the resources that are present in the design area, when I click, for example, on the service plan ID, Brainboard will suggest what is the most accurate resource that I can use here. And I pick this one, plan ID, the default, and Brainboard generate the link between the resources to depict this relationship. For the site config, I put at least here true. And for the storage, I'm going to search for the storage here. And for the name, I chose the default one. And for the key, I will just search for key and pick the first one. If you want to learn and understand what are these fields, you have the embedded documentation for every field. So for example, I want to understand what the account access key is. I just click here and Brainboard gives me the information that comes from the documentation for this field. And now when I update, my Terraform code here is updated. I can keep going and build the cloud infrastructure, but before I go further, I want to validate if my Terraform code is valid or not. So for this, you have the plan button here. This will create an execution environment on the fly and executes the Terraform plan on the generated code and gives you the output. So here it starts first by doing the Terraform init, then it will do the Terraform plan, and I have the output right after. Okay, so this is the output of my Terraform plan. Everything is good. The configuration is correct. I can keep going now, and I will add the private endpoint. I know that the private endpoint is within the subnet, so I'm going to search for a subnet first here and add it into the design. And you can say, okay, the subnet is within the vnet, so I'm going to put the vnet here. And you can see Brainboard automatically detect the relationship between the vnet and subnet and fix it. So it put the subnet inside the vnet, and when I click on the subnet, it updated its Terraform code to reflect this relationship. I configured the vnet quickly here, give it this network value, this range, 16, and give it a name, vnet1. And I will do the same for the subnet, give it a smaller range, 24, and call it snet1. So now I will add my private endpoint inside. So I will add my private endpoint here. You can see Brainboard detected all the information, the subnet ID, resource group name, and the location, that is a variable. And now I will configure my private endpoint. I will call it onboarding. So, and the connection is not manual. I call it onboarding again. And since I want to connect it to the Azure function, here in the connection resource ID, I just type function. And Brainboard will suggest what are the valid attributes, Terraform attributes, that I can use from the function. I use pick the ID since I'm looking for the ID here. And since this is a website, I'm going to add sites here. And you can see now the Terraform code that is generated reflect my design and the information that I put in the configuration of every resource. So at this point, I can validate the Terraform code again, or I can leverage the CI/CD here to create a workflow that allows me to check for security, for costs, for naming conventions, policies, and so on before I deploy. This CI/CD workflow, we keep it for the next session. We have a dedicated video for the CI/CD to share with you more details on how you can configure it and how you can trigger it either manually or via the API, and how you can even configure the drift detection. So for now, I create the first version of my infrastructure. Here, I call it version 1. This allows you to navigate the history of your infrastructure in a more effective way. So all the versions will be added here, and you can easily go back to check out any specific version, and Brainboard will update both the design and the Terraform code. All right, so we talked about different things, how you can build cloud infrastructure in Brainboard, generate the Terraform code, leverage, do the plan, or I will share with you how to leverage the CI/CD and how to version it within Brainboard. Of course, with this versioning, you have the possibility to do the pull request into your preferred repo. You just select the repo that you want, and you can specify the folder, the branch, and the files to exclude or include and do the pull request. This was a quick video that shows you how you can quickly and easily build your use case, have the Terraform code generated, and ready to be deployed. I hope you enjoyed it and you find it useful. If you have any other questions, feel free to reach out to us through the application. You click on the help, ask us anything. This will connect you directly with our engineering team so they can answer your questions, or you can reach out to us by email to support@brainboard.co. Thank you for your time, and see you in the next video talking about the CI/CD. Goodbye.